Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Universe podcast. Glad to have you here. This is going to be sort of a part two of the last episode where I talked about the importance of solitude and how it can bring growth and help with self discovery and all that. And this is going to be what I could call the negative effects of that, something we touched on a little bit, which was loneliness and how the solitude can lead to negative loneliness. And yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today. It's going to be like a part two of last time. I realized that my intros are a bit too long. So all links, information, and whatever will all be in the description below. Like, subscribe, comment, and all that. And now let's get into loneliness. So, in loneliness as a concept, there's the difference between choosing to be alone um, versus feeling unwanted. So that's the difference that I'd say is distinct between solitude and loneliness. Loneliness typically comes with a sense of no self-worth or a sense of um, unwantedness where you feel like in whatever circumstance or situation you're in, that do I really need to be here? And so you isolate yourself and continue thinking about, I don't think I'm worth other people's time. And that's a very negative thing that I think should be dealt with. So, why do people feel lonely? There's many reasons from psychological and emotional perspectives. One is social disconnection, so feeling unseen, unheard, or misunderstood is quite a big one, especially if you're someone who has been in a lot of social spaces, which I'm sure we all have been, whether it's birthdays, whether it's teams of any kind, whether it's events or friend groups or hangouts, etc. If you've ever felt like you're invisible in a situation like that, I'd say is one of the main causes of that feeling of loneliness. And it happens to a lot of people, even those who are, in a sense, you could call them extroverted, still experience that sort of thing, in my opinion. So, second thing as to why people tend to feel lonely is a lack of deep friendships, which I feel is a huge one because you don't feel like you're benefiting or that you can rely on the friends that you have. And hence, you feel like you're going through life alone because that friendship isn't deep enough to be able to share some things without, like you can get corrected for them by your friend, but the fact that you can't even talk about it makes the friendship not as deep as it should be. Another thing is life transition. So moving to new places or areas, losing friendships, breakups, grief, etc. Basically, life changes, circumstantial life changes that are outside of our control. And I talked a bit about this in the last episode, and I feel like that is another big one, especially because it's one that you can't control at all. You're just like, oh, that happened. Now what? And then you start blaming yourself for something that you couldn't control, and then now it takes you, on that downward spiral, in my opinion. And then obviously there's fourthly social media, and I feel like it's something that I have talked about quite a bit in regards to issues of self-esteem, confidence, and etc. In this case, it's sort of the same thing where you see people who have quote unquote perfect lives, and you think that that is ideal, and you forget that it's not realistic in some cases. Granted, there's some people who have wonderful lives out there, but a lot of them don't have realistic lives. Or at least think to yourself, in my situation right now, is that life possible, or does it even make sense? Some people just want simple lives, others want complicated lives. Complicated in regards to expenses and all that, but I digress. When in that state, always think to yourself, is this really realistic? So, one, a few examples, or one example in this case, or two examples. I'll give two examples. So, you can take Riley from Inside Out, which I feel like is a good place to take anything emotionally based from, because it's a movie about emotions. And her moving and everything that was going on inside her head, literally, because that's what we were watching, is an example of how that can change a person. You could tell that when joy and sadness were basically unintentionally cast out in a way, and the other emotions, disgust, fear, and anger, were left, uh, it was chaotic in every way, shape, and form. And I feel like the balance of emotions is really shown through that movie, but that's a topic for another day. But it is an example of what loneliness can do to a person in a situation like that. Another example is you have a person or a child, and they drift apart from their childhood friends, either by circumstance or by choice, and then they struggle to make new friends. So, two things here: you struggle to make the new friends, and then you regret, letting go of the old friends. And that's, again, in and of itself, a negative thing, in my opinion. So, that is what I'd say are some examples of how that can affect us as people. Um, Other effects, I think, prolonged loneliness, in my example, can lead to anxiety, depression, and even physical health problems, because your body is fighting with certain, chemicals within your system to be able to basically keep you alive, because in states like those, you're not able or willing to take care of yourself, especially when you go on a downward spiral. You start, rejecting your physical health, especially, and the health of your mind. So you scroll instead of read, or you just sit at home instead of exercise, things like those. And as a result, it just makes it worse. It leads to anxiety, depression, a myriad of other mental problems. And as I have said many times, it is an absolutely horrible thing that can be, especially if you're in that point at a very young age, it can really, really change even the next 90 years of your life. Other effects, I think, of this prolonged loneliness is your negative self-talk cycle. So you assume that no one cares, which causes you to isolate further. And when you live inside your head from a negative point of view, because last time we talked about living inside your head from a positive side. When you live inside your head from a negative point of view, you'll never have anything good to say about yourself. When you live inside your head from a negative point of view, you will never have anything good to say about yourself. Hence, why breaking that negative self talk cycle is extremely important for the future of your health as a human being. Um, and then, lastly, there's the danger of getting too comfortable in being in that space So you forget how to reach out to people, even in circumstances in which you know you need help with something, you struggle to ask for help because you know you're used to just being alone, which again brings down the difference between solitude and loneliness is that solitude is a choice and you can break out of it instantly and just, reach out if you need help, etc. But loneliness traps you, in my opinion. So, with that being said, how do we break out of this cycle? So, there's a few actionable solutions that I've seen uh, could work, in my case at least. So, there's recognizing that you're not alone in feeling this way. There's a song, I believe, by NF called Just Like You. So it's basically the meaning behind the song is basically in these spirals of loneliness, regret, grief, etc. There's millions of us just like you. So it's just realizing that you're not the only one going through this thing. The good thing about that is that means that there are solutions to it. It's not a good thing. It's not a good place to be. Being happy and joyful is actually something to look forward to in life, which is something that I appreciate about the life that I'm living right now compared to what was before. And then reaching out is a very, very important thing. Small steps to connect with people and, talk more about what you're feeling. It doesn't have to be everything, but even if it seems a bit daunting or scary to expose yourself, it could be, you could make it close. Start with your best friend or your parents or relative you trust, etc. Start with someone that you know won't judge you for anything that you say, and start from there because it's going to be more useful than you think. A lot of people, when they, I don't know exactly where I read this, but a lot of people, when they enter something like therapy, for example, you'd find that 90% of people, or 98% of people, just wanted someone to talk to about anything. It doesn't even have to be too deep. It doesn't even have to be a very, very serious topic. Just want someone to talk to about anything. And that person could be, as I said, it could be your best friend, your parent, your sibling, close relative, very close friend. Um, but reaching out is important. Then there's also finding your people in a way. So maybe it could be within a sports group, maybe it could be within a fellowship group where you just meet and discuss things, a sports group where you're engaged in volleyball or tennis or football, or even preferably a team sport where you're actively participating with other people in doing something. And that can also help a lot with bringing you out of your shell and making you not even want to go back. Like you're having so much fun being out there that you don't regret the decision to take that step to come out of your shell and forget about that state of loneliness. And then there's, in the midst of reaching out, there's understanding that vulnerability, to whatever extent you're comfortable with, is necessary and it builds real connections. Basically, you knowing the person you're talking to and the person you're talking to knowing you, I feel is extremely essential when it comes to building these connections. And then you just build trust with people. You're able to build a sense of trust and connection, and vice versa with the person that you are interacting with. And as I conclude, I just say it's natural. It's something that even the most extroverted people go through, that feeling of loneliness. But staying there is what is detrimental to any aspect of your future, whether physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual health. It is detrimental. Just staying in that state is not good whatsoever. Um, and you're not invisible. You're not forgotten. and you matter. So that's what I want to leave you guys with as I conclude this episode. Thank you so much for watching or listening, whether on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or here on YouTube. I am very, very grateful. As usual, all links and details will be in the description below. Again, do not forget you're not invisible, you're not forgotten, and you matter. And feel free to leave suggestions for future topics. I'm always open to hearing what you guys think. For those who have shared feedback on this podcast and on my newsletter, I am very grateful for you guys doing so. It's good to know that I'm not doing this for nothing. And yeah, that'll be it. And lastly, for the third time, you're not invisible, you're not forgotten, and you matter. And I'll see you in the next episode. Take care and goodbye.